All right, welcome back to Off the Record, where we talk about whatever
we want.
And this is our Patreon. So thank you for defibrillators. You guys are fucking awesome.
Defibrillator. I can't say that word.
Because it's Patreon, dick, fuck, sex.
You can say sex. Will YouTube bring you there?
So this,
I feel like now you don't even know.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
You might offend somebody. You'd be like, sex?
So you can curse,
what do you mean?
do whatever you want.
I didn't know I couldn't do that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Well, that was reserved back then.
Sometimes I'm actually confused which articles go which, because like I don't really have the best like gauge on what's appropriate and what's not. But our channel manager Jess is really good.
True.
So sometimes she'll just look at, okay, this is the juiciest content. This needs to go on Patreon.
Sometimes we end up talking about some shit off camera too, and then like in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, we did that on camera, and then that was pretty good, and then I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it again on camera again, and then I'm like, oh wait, hold on a second. As I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, this is not Patreon. This is not for on camera shit.
Yeah.
It's confusing. You can get into our little bubbles here.
That's true.
I feel like what's controversial now is not even talking about sex, but talking about your real political opinions. Ooh, that shit will get you canceled, bro. That shit will get you fucked. Watch out.
Wait, would sex get you canceled before?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you can't be putting like
In the 80s and shit?
or pussy on the, like if you put pussy in your title.
Oh, that just gets you demonetized. It won't get you canceled.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
no.
right.
Well,
Should
I
get you
mean,
demonetized.
I feel like there was an era,
the difference.
like, even in the 90s or whatever, like people would be like, oh, that's too fucking raunchy. That's too crazy, man.
I just think now, like, the more people talk about it, the more I can hear, the more I can learn, the more other people can learn. And, like, being open about it is good. I feel like when you try to hide it, like, back in the day, like you're saying, like, that's when people don't learn, it's taboo, they don't want to talk about it, but it's, like, important to talk about.
But you can't even be too open. Like if you're open and you're not, whatever you're open about isn't with what I guess like the loud minority is talking about, then you're gonna be in big trouble.
It's like you can't exercise thoughts anymore and think of possibilities if it doesn't go with the narrative that's popular.
I think you can if you know how to voice it.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I do. I think you need to be more calculated in how you do it, and I think you need to understand what you're going to say before you say it and how people are going to react. I don't think it's as free to be like, hey, this is my opinion, and people would understand that like, hey, maybe you didn't fully think that through, or this is just like a stream of consciousness.
Right, but that's how it should be, right? Is like
That's what open means.
You should have a brainstorming session. Like you don't have a well executed thought all the time because you're not presenting all the time. Like what we used to do is just sit in a circle and play with an idea because that's where you come to a conclusion. That's where you hear different opinions. But if you're just sitting alone in a room and you work out those thoughts and you try to come out, I think that's the issue with today, right? Is they expect you to know already. It's like they're blaming kids of a different country to know already about like racism or whatever when their countries don't have any
like
racism.
the whole,
so it's like, and then they get blamed for it, and it's like that doesn't make any sense to me.
I was having a conversation with Tiff about blackface.
His wife.
Oh yeah, my wife. I was having a conversation with her about blackface, and we're preparing the article for that episode, and I was like, oh, that sucks because like there's a lot of international IG influencers that are getting like canceled for doing blackface or whatever, and I was like, where are they from? And then some of these people like non-black people from like other parts of Africa, parts of Europe that are not as much of a melting pot as it is here. And so I think their understanding of like the racial barriers and like what is appropriate to do and what is not appropriate to do is a different understanding from what we know.
Like Holland has that.
But they're getting canceled for the same
I used to
shit
think
we
that,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Until someone was like, well, what if they wanted to do like Asians? Then are they gonna start taping their eyes and that's okay? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's not okay. I'm not saying it makes it feel any better. As someone that would be like a victim of their hate speech, right? Let's just call it that. It doesn't make it feel any better, but I also can't fault them for
like going so hard at them.
Yeah, like there's one time I was overseas, and then like these European dudes, I mean, they were working at their shop, and we were walking by and it's like a smaller town. I was walking by, and then they go, oh, good day, oh, like that. And I'm like,
What the fuck?
and my initial reaction.
That is so fucking racist that it's funny.
Yeah.
Because you don't expect that.
You don't expect it. It just slaps you out of nowhere. I'm walking, right? And then that happens, and I'm like, my initial reaction is to get, my blood's boiling now. I'm like, what the fuck, Like, I'm trying to have a good time, and you're like, I want to fucking slap, I want to step up to you, But then I'm looking at them as they're doing it, and it doesn't feel like the ha 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 ha.
So you felt like they were trying to connect.
They were really trying to connect.
Through their ignorant way.
I know, like, you're Asian, and I've seen this. I swear, like, I'm gonna connect with you, and I hope you buy something. I hope you step into my store, and and they're just trying to work me like a normal human being would if they didn't know that was racist.
I think that's what I was trying to say before with like and the other thing about when it comes to comedy or what you say, it's like you can see the intent of somebody. You can see where it derives like their beliefs, and in an email where it's like one sentence long, you could see that there's not a real compassionate person. They're not trying to connect with somebody. They're like where their joke goes. Oh, I was just trying to make a joke. Like somewhere underneath that isn't just a joke. Like in that instance, they were just ignorant to whatever was offensive. Culturally, maybe geographically, it's just different for them. But you felt that there wasn't like hate behind it.
Yeah, I felt
other
like
things you're like you can see when somebody is like.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's the difference between ignorance and hate, like racism.
But then there's also like willfully ignorant, where it's like you don't want to see the truth.
Yeah.
And you don't want to look at it, and you're like, it's not like that was like, kind of. They were just ignorant about what they meant well. There's other people who they don't mean well, they don't mean harm, but they're just like, I don't want to acknowledge this exists, and they're just willfully ignorant to the fact that like they don't feel like they have to.
That's almost like the
acknowledge
worst kind. Like it's almost as if they're
That's
trying to
entitlement.
push your buttons just to see what you would do.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, you're so everything's so offensive. It's like, man, like you just don't want to accept anything different than your status quo, which is just like carry on with life. And it's like as soon as it becomes inconvenient to you to do anything, then all of a sudden it's a fucking problem. But
Yeah, I think for people, if there was like a mistake or like someone just didn't know, like they came from another country, to instead of just like completely like cancel and like think, because for them they don't know, to educate.
Yeah.
Like I think with everything, it's like you have to teach people, and you can't just. I don't see it getting better if we just like say fuck you to us, or they say fuck you to us, unless we're able to have a communication. But then that goes to the extreme sides of the people that are doing that, and then the people that are caught in the middle that could have that conversation.
That's the tough part, though. I rarely see people like really try to explain something. Like I just see comments going, "You fucking dumbass! I can't believe you viewed that way." And like, there's no compassion on both sides, and it's just both sides almost trying to win an argument.
Yeah, the internet's the worst place to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or like one
that's
side.
like the court that it gets judged in, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like one person,
That's the tough part.
does a whole explanation, like a whole paragraph, like they're trying to create a meaningful conversation out of it, and all it takes is one person on the other side to go, well, fuck you and your thoughts, and then everything just
explodes.
flip table,
I've had conversations with friends on why they don't like guns, and for their stance is like, hey, like because of mass shootings and stuff like that. But I'm like, for my sense, it's like, yeah, that's why I have guns. Like for the same thing, I don't like mass shootings. I don't like things. I want to be able to defend myself, my family. And through conversation, we still both disagree, but we're still both friends. And we both now.
Well, now you have understand. Yeah.
Now we both understand each other's place, and it's not just like, hey, fuck you for this, fuck you for that. Because I'm like, if I had to put myself politically, I would definitely be more left-leaning. But I'm a left-leaning, say, Democrat. They would put me as, or a Democrat that gun owner.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't exist for them. But then it's like now with the whole like say Black Lives Matter movement, I think that went down because now all these black people that are like, hey, we have to defend ourselves, we have to arm ourselves. That kind of toned down. So that in that sense has been nice to see that like, hey, like if we're able to see from both sides, because like now we're seeing like, hey, black people need to defend themselves. And they need to own guns. So these people that are defending themselves from the quote-unquote right or bad people, from what they're viewing, and them owning guns is like, okay, now I can see how my previous argument didn't like last.
True. Yeah, I used to be like really left-leaning and like not like hate guns and all that stuff. And then I think the older you get, the more responsibilities you get in life, and the more you have to protect within your own life. Because if you're young, teenager, early 20s, you're pretty much like almost like aimless at certain points. You know, let's go party, let's do that, let's have fun. You don't have a mortgage, you don't have a family, you're actually leaving the nest, so like you really have nothing to your name. And in that mindset, like I was so like left leaning, but now as I get older and the more I have to my name and the more I have to protect and also kind of keep building, like I'm kind of like leaning towards the middle now, where I'm like, okay, I see both sides.
Yeah.
It's like a lot more. It just feels a lot more like healthier too. I hate leaning on either side.
I think like
And most people are in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, that's the
And normal people don't constantly argue online and fucking complain online. So that's not. So the loud minority
on both sides. The loud minority on both sides.
they're not normal people. Like they're not normal conservatives and
it could
normal
be-
liberals.
It could be the 10% on this side, the 10% on that, but they make up 100% of the voice.
Yeah, and then the problem is now it makes the people in the middle feel like, wait, do I have to pick a side? You know, and it just feels so weird. Like I wish there was a third option, maybe even a third news outlet or something that was like, hey, these are generally the views that we talk about, so it makes it feel like it's okay and normal, and there's a voice for the middle, whereas just having voices on the far ends.
I think the thing with being in the middle is that you don't want to voice anything because you're naturally, you know, more or less neutral in a lot of things. You're in the middle, so you're like, you know, I believe this and I believe this, so I'm just not going to say anything, and so which by default makes you the middle.
You get in trouble too, though.
But you don't like to pretend that you stand for something.
It makes the middle silent, and it makes the fringes on either side the loud minority. So it's like by default, I think a lot of people in the middle don't voice their things because you know they aren't internet warriors who argue on the internet, so they're not heard from. Where it's like there should be a medium for that. There should be a way of expressing that. But I feel like a lot of people in the middle just kind of go, This isn't my fight. And then they stay silent, and their beliefs then.
My fight right now is with the better of humanity, and where I can clearly see that there is one side to it.
Right.
But then with the being in the middle part, like it's not even really necessarily being in the middle, it's just being able to make a judgment for my own sake, and see what's good and bad. Because especially with a lot of my friends, they're like, you have to completely agree with one side, like everything they say and everything. But I'm like, even on that side, you have different, say, candidates that you're running for. So I mean, why are we choosing different ones if they're technically all in the same one and fighting for the same cause, you know? And then like all those different things. But I'm like, there's so many different issues that I feel like you have to educate yourself. You have to have an opinion, like a true opinion. You can't just go with the mass and be like, oh, they're doing this, I still don't know about it, but it's on my side, I have to agree with it.
You know what I do though is I don't compete with people I can murder. So like, what the fuck? Basically, right? It's like, you're a trained boxer. Would you beat up children? I mean, it might make you feel great.
I don't think you need to be a trained boxer to beat up children.
But that's what I'm saying is like, it might make you feel great because you keep winning, but what does it do? What does it do, right? Good. So like, I don't argue with people who are just not ready to argue. They're not ready to talk.
That's a better way of saying.
And I'm not being passive. I'm just like, that's wasted energy, dude. Like,
I think that's also part of the issue, though. It's like no one wants to. The voices on either side are the only ones being loud and being heard. So that's all we think is there. And there's people like who have a point of view or have a stance who feel like it isn't agreeing with this, it isn't agreeing with that, and they're like, well, I'm not going to have this conversation because there is no one to receive it. But there's other people who are closer to the right or closer to the left, but still in the same sort of mindset as you that you could connect with, but no one's being like, hey, let's have this forum. Because a forum is always for this belief, that belief, left, right, the extremes, but the people in, like, let's say the middle are just like, there's not really like a forum for this, so I'm not going to voice this conversation where I could be reaching somebody and we could find that middle ground that we're looking for because it doesn't seem like it's a needed thing where all you see is this like extreme combat where you're like, I need to defeat this person. I need to win this argument.
Almost like one end, it's the defund, almost abolish the police. And there's the other one that's like, I'm going to use excessive force whenever the fuck I need to do it because I'm doing my job.
Too contrasting.
I need to go home and see my family. But it's like, why does it have to be like this?
Why can't they just make out?
You guys make out and have sexy times. There's not a conversation, like a civil conversation being had with a lot of rational beliefs that's being talked about. It's just this crazy side and this crazy side.
Well, I've accepted that in order for people to have civil conversations, they have to become a human being, and that you're not gonna have these extremists like they're by nature, they have extreme beliefs, and then by who they are, they're just like kind of on the fringes of society. Like they're not civil, rational human beings. So because of that reason, I think that it's going to be difficult to try to get these people to kind of calm down and be more smart about how they're going by, their beliefs and what they want other people to believe in shit.
But remember, that's like maybe not the people you should be talking to. Like if they are the fringe, the fringe by definition is a minority. They're the smaller amount. So it's like most people feel like they need to target that side of the argument, where I feel like there's more in the middle represents the majority of how people feel, regardless of your political leaning, where that's where the conversation needs to be held and where things will actually moved forward. I feel like trying to reach somebody who's an extremist on either side is just not going to work, and it's also not getting the most people. It's reaching that human level of like who are you talking to is the thing. Who are you trying to reach? What are you trying to get done? It's like we can talk all day long with a group of people in an echo chamber that believe the same thing you believe.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, and it's like no one's going to move anything across, so you have to reach a little bit across, the aisle or whatever, whether it's political or just like on a sort of what you believe basis, and try to reach people who have a similar mindset towards humanity but different beliefs and different upbringing, and be like, how do we come together on this idea versus just arguing with the extremes, which doesn't really get anything done but make more argument.
I think that is the sensible thing that most people should do, because that's what's going to work. But I think humans are humans, and what they want is their beliefs to be confirmed. So that is going to feel much better than actually doing the difficult job of breaking your reality, listening to the other side, and then going, all right, let's find a win-win situation where we can both cohabit this country and win together.
Yeah.
That's the sensible thing, but it takes time, I think, for someone. There's a lot of intellectuals that can't even do that. There's like super smart people that can't do that. And I think that that's not to say that it can't be done. I think my idea of it is that humans will be humans, and the majority of them just want their world. They want to control the story, and they're going to keep fighting until their story wins.
They want comfort. They want status quo. I mean, it's just like it's human nature. Just like whatever, keep this going. But
Yeah, it's almost like this, right? I almost see beliefs and political groups now as religions.
It
And
is.
now what
It is
we're
a
seeing
religion.
It's almost like a rivalry now between two religions, and they're not going to give up their beliefs.
Yeah.
I think though also it's, say with this stuff that's happening now, there's always that feeling that's been happening, but right now it's like at its peak, or there's like a big spike in it where it kind of needs to happen, and once it kind of settles down, that's where we should like start now, kind of like you're saying, like bridging that gap between people. But when it kind of, because this stuff does settle down, and hopefully in a good way where we're still pushing for the same movements, but in a more collective and like not completely out of like anger and stuff like that, because on the other sides of both, there's people that act like they're on that side, but are there just purely for like chaos,
I think I remember listening to this podcast, and I thought it was really a beautiful thought. But basically, we don't have leaders, and that's what we're lacking. And now we have influencers, right? So people in the past that would have taken up a leadership position in different schools of thought, politics, there will be a figurehead that represents a movement, and they can discuss and they can kind of come into the table with other figureheads, and then they can have like an agreement or whatever. There's no real leader representing a mindset anymore, like from the right or the left, right? You have BLM, but then who is the leader? There's no Martin Luther King.
There is no leader.
No, and then you have, guys on the quote unquote far right, but they're influencers. You have guys that are not far the new right, like guys that are kind of shunned in media, but they're a new school of conservatives, like Ben Shapiro,
those guys,
Candace Owens, and all these other guys, right? Like I see them as more influencers than actual leaders of that movement.
Right. They're just sharing the philosophy that they believe in.
Exactly.
They're not really leading for change.
That's the thing. And so what they were saying is like, if you had leaders of that community and they can come together, they can actually do something. And that's what they thought politicians did in the past, and people believed in them, and they used that as a representative. But no one respects our politicians or cares about what they do today. So then so we have all this like distrust in government or losing faith in government and what the politicians are doing. And then you have no figurehead in different political movements. So then it's chaos. So I thought that was really interesting because I was like, that is true. We do have a lot of influencers, and the people that can lead today, they rather be social media stars. Because if I didn't do this, maybe I would go into politics or something else. Because
how do you lead right now without using like social media and reaching to people? Because that's the only way they view things.
I think that what he's trying to say is that like a lot of people, when it comes to these people speaking out, their belief isn't, they don't care as much about their beliefs as they do about their social media. The opportunity to be a social media star or to get their voice or have their money or their fame is like, hey, I can make this way, being the mouthpiece for this belief. And I got a ton of followers, and I can do that. I'm making a living. Like I can do that.
People rather be entrepreneurs and influencers than being a political figurehead.
Yeah.
Or even like whatever group they're representing, they have to constantly just represent that group just because they're part of that group, instead of someone coming out and saying, hey, this country's really fucked up right now. I don't know if I made the right decisions with the whole corona thing, with everything that's happening right now, but we really need to come together, and here's our plan that we should do. We should come out with and try to follow to get back together. What were you saying?
But why would anyone want to do that when politics are all fucked up right now, and it's kind of like two parties that are going against each other, but behind the scenes they're really on the same team, and it's like anyone that's a good candidate comes in and they're like, hell no, you're not gonna get in this.
So like wherever there's an emergent leader, they already kind of get wiped out.
Yeah, because it happened to Yang, it happened to Tulsi.
We had so many good candidates, and it's like, oh, like y'all ain't on this team. Get away. You're a spy. You're in cahoots with someone else, and it's like, why would anyone? At this point, it's like, well, I'm just gonna look out for myself and my family. Because no one else is looking out for me. So I get it, man.
It's weird, too, because then, like, I don't know if this is, like, more in the conspiracy stuff, but, like, you have all these, like, candidates, right, that are looking for change, and when they push too hard for change, I feel like the powers that be also say, well, that's too much change.
Because they feel threatened.
We're not ready for that kind of change. That would change the powers that be in terms of how they make money, their control, and it's just like, and they control that shit. Yeah, so in essence, it's kind of like are we just waiting for the powers that be to die out, the old system to eventually die out before we?
I see a power shift now.
I do see a power shift. You're right, but it's very slow, and it's quite a struggle right now.